Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining in. It is Friday. Everyone's excited for Friday. Well, not in real estate. It doesn't really matter in real estate for it's a Friday or a Saturday. We work
That's
hard.
nice.
It's like you got the open houses, you're going and doing tenant screening, and now today is the 31st. So we have a lot of people, transitioning out old tenants, bringing in new tenants. I'm one of them. So I definitely got a rental unit to clean and have that ready for the first. But my name is Kayla Andrade. I am the founder of Ontario Landlords Watch. We are here to advocate for a fair and balanced housing system for both good landlords, good tenants, and taxpayers. And I always like to bring in special guests on to the Facebook Lives to talk about what we're doing in our advocacy efforts and who else to invite for this to this live broadcast than Nicole Forrester, who joined me on a panel with the Affordable Housing Summit that just happened past weekend. And I want to give a shout out to the amazing team with the Affordable Housing Summit crew. We had Sean Allen, we had Ryan Summers, and we had Sarah Summers. They were fantastic in getting the right people to this summit, and it was exhilarating. I absolutely loved it. I kind of went off on a tangent just because we've been talking about affordable housing in circles for years and years and decades, and it's like we understand the issues now. Like, what are those type of solutions? So, Nicole, thank you so much for jumping on and being a part of that panel with me. I couldn't have asked for anyone better to be sitting beside me. But we want to get everybody familiar with who you are, because your voice on that panel was very powerful, and I'm looking forward to sharing that panel discussion when the Affordable Housing Summit does have that link available to us. So tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Thanks so much, Kayla. It was so amazing to be your wing person on that panel. I think we were a dynamic duo, and you're absolutely such an amazing voice and advocate for landlords, which in such a strange turn of events is a voice that's not heard at this critical moment in Ontario with what is going on in the economy, this local economy, not only in Ontario, but also in Canada. It's very important that our landlords and our property investors are heard at this critical moment so that, as I said, we can, we're at an affordable housing summit today. We're at an economic crisis summit tomorrow, and we want to be the advocates that sort of head off that issue in describing how the imbalance in our current system really is affecting so many people in Ontario. So I am Nicole Forrester, real estate broker. I've been in the financial industry I'm born and raised Canadian, one of the original biracial Canadians. My parents met here 54 years ago in Toronto, born and raised. So I'm one of, I'm an Ontarian, I'm a Torontonian, I'm a Canadian. I'm it all. I'm biracial. I represent the immigrant experience. I represent born and raised Canadians who have been here for many generations. I'm a female who's been gone through our financial institutions. I was a stockbroker and investment executive for one of our largest institutions, one of the big four banks. I've managed money, and I've been trained to manage money and grow money for people and property investors for over 17 years. I was a managing broker of a Century 21, trained by one of the original old school brokers in Toronto. I'm also now part of an incredible global real estate company, EXP, and I'm part of the Wolfpack, which is actually a group which is the sweetheart, the fastest growing group in the fastest growing global real estate company in the world. So we've got some incredible technology that I've paired up with my old school financial knowledge and broker info. I am a landlord myself and property investor. I also represent landlords and tenants all over the Greater Toronto area. I'm an advocate for balanced deals in all aspects for tenants, for landlords. And I've been touched closely personally, but also with my clients from all aspects with this affordable housing crisis. I have an intimate knowledge of what's going on in the tribunal, and these are all their issues and breakdowns, as you've highlighted so beautifully in a lot of these processes. And something that I highlighted is that, you know, when we're having this breakdown, and it's so imbalanced in our view, for landlords and property investors, the signal that we're giving them, the economic market, is that, you know, Ontario is not a safe place to be a property investor or a landlord, because you can't have a fair hearing, and you can't sell or get your money out. So this is something that we absolutely need to address immediately. And we can reform from the system within. I know that you had some fantastic points with regards to what's going on in the tribunal, and how we can, like, very practical steps, I thought, which were brilliant, talking about tenants who are in arrears versus tenants who are actually having trouble with their landlords. Something I wanted to highlight is that, you know, I think people believe that landlords are these foreign investors or corporate landlords. And the 20% of landlords who are now in the tribunal, who are looking at carrying arrears of anywhere between $25,000 to $40,000 for more than 18 months, these are your neighbors, they are your friends, your family, your mom, your dad, your grandparents, your aunts, your uncles. We need to put a face, a Canadian face, on these landlords. They're people who have worked hard in this country and just saved up a little extra money to buy another property. And the way the system is set up right now, it really is encouraging, let's say, poor behavior on behalf of tenants who may be struggling at the time. That may be true. But as you mentioned, it's absolutely not fair for the government to outsource the support of tenants who are struggling to the private sector, who is the moms, dads, and the middle class. You know, it's a cycle that's really
Yep.
negative. You know, we're at this affordable housing summit, and there were so many great people that were brought together to talk about ideas of how we can create more affordable housing. But as I mentioned, we've got 20% of landlords who are duking it out for arrears right now in the tribunal, and that's 20% of units that are going to disappear off of the market, making it less affordable for tenants.
Mhm.
Simply because we are not looking, and we don't have a balanced court with the tribunal.
And we look at what government's been doing and trying to address that crisis at the tribunal and throwing money at it. Like, where there was $19 million given in for a 3-year time span to go to the landlord and tenant board, with an additional 6.5. But when we have adjudicators who are quitting or they're sick, they can't even issue out orders at the board. So how can we say, like, we have so much trust in the landlord and tenant board or even our government to fix the problem, when, you know, what is the possibility of us privatizing the landlord and tenant board? You know, can we create more of these justice systems in order for us to be able to get access to justice? Or are they doing it on purpose? You know, we have to have some streamlined approach, and the number one application at the board is for non-payment of rent. And here we're going to put more money into the landlord and tenant board to hire more adjudicators to deal with people who are not paying their rent. You know, it's flabbergasting to see what's happening, but we also are struggling to get that voice at the decision makers and the policy advisors, because it's not just the MPPs, it's the people who are working on these policies. And as you can see, and I think everyone can agree, that we have more that's coming of restrictions from a municipal standpoint, when they are preventing people from doing short-term rentals. They're preventing people from they're introducing landlord licensing. They're now trying to implement a structure of a rent eviction bylaw, making it even harder for people to create more units or to upgrade the existing stock that has been built back in the 1970s, and it needs renovation. So you can see, for people who have that, I understand, we can see why they're trying, but the landlords are not the enemy on this. They are the ones that are the contributors to 70% of the housing stock. You're giving someone that extra income for their retirement, at the same time providing that home. I'm online and people are like, "Oh, you greedy landlords, you parasites." And it's like, do you think tenants All tenants, even some of them, have the credit, they have the down payment, they have the job. Like, they have to have certain criterias to become a homeowner. Even if the properties were less in cost, you still have to go through that financing. And not all
Well,
tenants are going to be
but
that
there's
homeowner.
some tenants, and lots of tenants are landlords.
They
So
can
we
be.
have what we have are laws that are encouraging poor behavior.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we need to have laws that encourage good behavior. That's it. You know, like you brought up the fact that if you don't pay your bills, if you don't pay your Rogers bill or your telephone bill, what's going to happen? You're going to have a ding on your credit bureau, right?
If you go and steal gas, let's talk about stealing gas, $100 worth of gas.
There you
What
go.
happens, Nicole?
What happens to you if you steal gas? You have a criminal record. What happens if you don't pay your Rogers bill? You get a ding on your credit bureau.
Mhm.
So a contract with a landlord should be no different. You don't pay your gas or your utility bill, you have a ding on your credit bureau. If
Well,
you
it
do
does
pay
that now.
your
We have that with Front Lobby. Landlords can report unpaid rent and utilities to Front Lobby. It's shared with Landlord Credit Bureau and Equifax. But we have to make sure the education to our landlords are out there, making sure they're doing their credit check. A lot of the problems do come from them not even trying to do their credit checks on these potential tenants. But a lot of tenants have a lot of different tricks in their trade of providing that credit check to the landlord, thinking that it's actually legit, and it's really not. It's been photoshopped. So, there's a lot of loopholes that our tenants are utilizing, and unfortunately some of these landlords do fall prey to it, but they should have that peace of mind that there is that justice system that they can go to. I just had a call from a tenant in the city of Cambridge. His landlord is trying to kick out this tenant who's inviting 10 people into the home on a one-bedroom apartment. There's drug use that's happening, violence that's happening. He's afraid to bring his child to the home, his grandchild, because now he's the care provider for that grandchild, and he can't do it because of what's happening with that other tenant. And the landlord had went to the board, tried to evict the tenant 12 times already, and they're not able to get an eviction order on this in particular tenant. And now the tenant called me going, is there something I can do to my landlord? I'm like, whoa, like, he's done everything that he can do, but you could be a voice for him and connect with the elected officials to be like, hey, why is it taking so long for my landlord to get an order so that he can make my rental unit safe and enjoyable once again? And no one's there to stop, tenants from creating a muck at this rental property. So now
Well,
the
let's talk
tenants
about
are even.
Front Lobby, because I don't think that that's well known, and I'd like to share that with my audience and with my landlord clients. So when a tenant does not pay their water bill, or they're in arrears and they're not paying their rent, you can then go to Front Lobby as a landlord and register them, so that will affect their credit rating. Is that correct?
That's correct. Without an order. So you don't even have to go to the landlord and tenant board. If you have a lease with that tenant, you have the tenant's full name and their birth date, you can register that payment or their lease to Front Lobby, and it gets shared to Landlord Credit Bureau and Equifax, and it comes up on the Equifax as a trade line. So when we are looking at credit score, landlords are just looking at the score. It's like, no, you need to look at the trade lines of what's available to the tenants, but it will eventually impact their score, because you have this delinquency as a trade line on their credit score. So a lot of
Amazing. I think that is really important information, Kayla. And what we should do is include that link when we're sharing this, because Front Lobby that's absolutely a step in the right direction. That landlords know and property investors know that even before you have to wait, and what we know too is that the tribunal, where there were backed up, I think we found out during our panel there with one of our other esteemed guests, that they're no longer backed up 18 months. They're now backed up 4 months. So we are seeing some progress, at least. So we're seeing that shorten. But even before you get your tribunal hearing, you can report them to the credit bureau. So that's just a layer of protection, that there is a consequence to not paying your landlord.
Well, and this is the thing, it's been happening now for a couple of years where this has been a tool for landlords and even good tenants to benefit from, because it can also benefit the tenant by having their credit improve by making their payments on time. And Justin Trudeau came out and said, we're going to make sure that people's rent is going to impact their credit score, showing that, you know, you should be able to benefit from paying your rent on time. We're like, where you been, buddy? Like, you hiding underneath a rock? You know, this has already been done, but don't trick people thinking that it's just going to benefit them. Let them know that it can also impact their credit history and impact their ability to seek accommodations if they're not making their payments on time. A lot of landlords are going through many challenging situations with their tenants, but what's happening is that we're not giving them that education. Where if you have an N12 application for landlords, I would go to the tenant and saying, listen, you know, I do have the option to move back in, or my family members to move back in. I'm going to give you 60 days notice. And if you choose to fight me and have a hearing, I just want to let you know that order does become public. And I don't think other landlords would like the fact of accepting a tenant knowing that they went and fought an N12 application with no evidence that the landlord was trying to do it illegally. And that's why the tenants have taken advantage of this broken system, and they're now actually looking for advice on how to negotiate cash for keys in order for a landlord to take possession of their rental unit for themselves, their family members, or to sell the property. And that's where a lot of some real estate deals are falling through, because they can't guarantee that the property will be vacant before the closing date. So we have, like, you know, certain situations like the N12 application that could be removed from the landlord and tenant board, because why should there be a hearing? If you have punishments in place, such as going from $50,000 to $100,000, if you're caught doing an unlawful eviction, and a tenant has up to 2 years to bring the landlord back to the landlord and tenant board to exercise their right, why are we even having a full hearing if we can just do the paperwork through the portal? Everyone has an understanding that it has been filed. The tenants know their rights between the paperwork. Then the tenants know what form they have to file if they find that the landlord and the new owner didn't move in and they've re-rented it back out. You know, we can alleviate a lot of the backlog at the board on that.
Absolutely. I mean, I agree with you 100% that, you know, there's things that are in the tribunal right now that shouldn't be. But this is the sort of poor behavior that I've seen, is that people are taking advantage of the long wait times and saying that they haven't been properly served when they have been, just to muck up the works, because they don't want to move, because they are either going to have to move into an area that they don't want to, or they're going to have to pay more rent than they're currently paying, as landlords are doing what they need to do for their families, whether that's, you know, moving into properties or having to sell properties or whatever it is that they're doing with their, you know, with their investments.
It is sad. It is sad because you see that there is the increase of rent. It's not because of these new bills that are coming that do not have rent control. There is a lot of evictions that are happening. There's over 37,000 applications at the landlord and tenant board for non-payment of rent. So when you do see it, an eviction happening, and knowing that the landlord is going to have to do some work into that rental unit and cover their losses between that tenant that did decide to take advantage of the system, of course the rents are going to increase. And I think a lot of it has to do with the 2.5% increase that landlords are capped at, you know, and luckily we're getting the max of 2.5. But if we're only able to increase at 2.5, and the city and the municipalities are increasing their cost to the homeowner, how can we continue to keep operating? It's almost like it's a non-sustainable system, just like government housing is a non-sustainable system. I'm still shocked on how government housing is still alive, for that matter, with not doing rent increases. They're offering $120 rental units with water included for a 2-bedroom with garage. It's you know, taxpayers are subsidizing the rest of that, and knowing that they do you know, allow that tenant in that unit to get more money from either OW, ODSP. They get either child support, they're getting Trillium. Like, they do get a lot of money. I'm just still shocked to see how it's $120 a month with water included.
Well, someone had brought up, at the Affordable Housing Summit, because there were so many great industry leaders and professionals that were there. This was a skilled tradesman that I was sitting next to during one of the presentations about the container homes that they
Hmm.
were talking about building. And, he had such an interesting suggestion that, and, I can see it being done, that there should be a co-ownership option with the government for people who are granted this sort of a hand up and not a hand out.
Hmm.
So, the idea that if you can qualify for this subsidized type housing, it becomes a co-ownership option, so that there's pride of ownership, and eventually, some of your rent is moving into an ownership component of this property. And the idea that you're taking someone who is going from the rental space into the ownership space creates so much good energy, if you will, into the economy and into the world, in that we're moving from the idea of this is all I can do to get by, to this is my space to invest in, to protect, to work towards, and eventually own outright. So, we do have co-ownership.
And what type of structure was this?
Well, we were talking about the containers in general, and how that they were going, they're talking about introducing this as housing and a housing option from an affordability point of view. But this is just me and the skilled tradesman talking about, like, what a great idea it would be for the government to implement a co-ownership option here, to sort of flip the script a little bit and actually help people who are in a rental space go into an ownership space, converting that. And that would, when you are an owner, there's more pride of ownership, opposed to, somebody is, giving this to you. There just is a different mentality when it comes to your own ownership.
We're now seeing more articles about becoming a tenant more so than becoming an owner, with these interest rates that are going up all the time. So people are like, oh, I think it's starting to make sense to become a tenant than it is to become a homeowner. A little bit more pricier on that. But it's the same philosophy. When I spoke with a regional counselor about people living in government housing and having the people who are paying their rent on time, having that data sent to front lobby, you can actually help those tenants build up their credit. Because right now, when you get into government housing, it's almost impossible for them to get out, because they still either have low income or they just don't have the credit to jump into the private market. But even though the private market's already saturated as it is, like the need, and I think it's like the one thing that people are not quite they're afraid to talk about, is the mass immigration that has happened in the last few years. I think that's where we started to really feel the pinch in our affordability, and not just in housing, but in our jobs, in our healthcare. All of this is now contribute to the amount of people that came to Canada knowing that we don't have the accommodations to suit them. Like, we're using hotels and motels to house people. Like, that's not a way of living either. I think they've just put the cart before the horse, and now we have a lot of a demand to build quite a bit of rental units. And if the private sector is leaving Ontario and going into the States, or they're going to Portugal and Costa Rica, like, who's going to fill that void? I just, it's like, for me, we're not creating any more right now. Why? Just because of the Residential Tenancy Act and Landlord and Tenant Board. For me, I'm just at a standstill to manage what I have, and to understand that each tenant comes with their own risk. And we need to make sure that we have the funding to make sure that we can sustain that rental property, even if the tenants don't pay. So putting more risk on the homeowner is going to be catastrophic to that private housing sector, and more demand on our taxpayers to keep building, managing, and maintaining and subsidizing government housing.
Like, so many important points that I sort of want to touch on there, because, okay, so number one, this is what I was saying: by creating this imbalance between tenants and landlords and not protecting landlord and property investor rights, you are creating an exodus of money from Ontario. That being said, There are other places in Canada for property investors where they are protected, and markets where it's not such a huge price tag to buy in. So we're looking at New Brunswick. And like I said, I'm part of a global real estate company, and it couldn't be at a better time. I have partners all over Canada and all over the world that I can literally warm connect people to, that can, number one, walk you through the steps of ownership of an investment property in New Brunswick. And we can have property managers or local people on the ground to attend to your tenants. And let's talk about New Brunswick, for instance. In that property market, you're looking at purchasing a detached home anywhere between $250,000 to $350,000, which is a fraction of the cost. It's a third, if not more or less, than what we're looking at an average price in the Greater Toronto area. And you're looking at between $1,700 and $2,000 in rental income, with, sort of a maximum eviction for someone of non-payment of like 40 days. So those types of numbers encourage property investment. And this is what I'm saying, like, take the emotion out of it. The numbers don't work in Ontario with the laws the way that they are. But that doesn't mean that the money has to flood out of Canada. If you're a property investor who has lost faith in what's going on in Ontario, we can help you. I can help you connect with people, great realtors and great resources that can very easily help you invest your money and keep it in Canada. Also have that in Calgary as well, and in Alberta. There are other spots within Canada that we can take our investment dollars, and instead of having one property, we can have three. The other thing that can be done, and we've got the wealth of this country sitting with our baby boomers, but in a lot of ways it's tied up in their properties and they're not living the proper quality of life that they could. This could free up some more housing for people as well. These property owners who will, they don't need these huge detached homes anymore. So instead of having this massive detached home for $2 million or $2.5 million that's appreciated amazingly for you from 30 years ago, why not trade that in, buy a condo, and be a snowbird to Hawaii, or be a snowbird to Mexico, or be a snowbird to Portugal? And once again, these can be markets where, when you're not in those, maybe you spend 3 months a year there, and then in those times, then you rent out those properties and through short-term rental or a vacation time type rental situations. And once again, I've got 90,000 agents globally. We're in 24 different countries. And, we can set this up now. And in the United States, financing is a lot easier than it used to be. I have a financial background. So there's ways that we can either take money out of your property with a HELOC, and then you can purchase outright where you are, or we could take out that 20 or 30% down payment and connect you with a foreign mortgage or a US mortgage. Like, these are things that people don't even believe are available to them.
Well, now we have capital gains, though. Now we're like, we keep working, we keep putting the risk, we're taking out of money here, we're putting it, but now the government's coming after capital gains. Now, like, I'm hearing stories about this poor lady. She's now on the hook of $40,000 because she gifted a property to her grandkids, and they're going after her for 40,000. She's on fixed income. So they have this smoke and mirror effect to make it look like they're attacking the rich, and everyone who is, struggling is going to be like, yeah, we want that. But everyone wants to be rich. Everyone wants to be rich, but they also hate the rich. So it's a really catch-22 of, how do you keep growing in a country that seems to be attacking your good behavior, working hard? I think that's why a lot of them have
started. The rich, when the average price of a home in Toronto area is over $1 million, who are the rich? I mean, we're talking about, number one, we're talking about the middle class.
Yeah.
We're not talking about the rich. We're talking about the middle class, and what the governments on all levels are doing is blowing up the middle class. So I mean, I think we, more than just being an advocate for landlords, we're an advocate for the middle class. And the middle class has always been people who've just worked hard, saved their pennies, and invest those pennies. And there's a principle of Westminster, which means we have a right, a constitutional right, to arrange our finances in the most tax efficient manner possible.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to look at the fact that the government at this point in time is creating a situation where it may not be the best idea at this moment in time to invest in certain areas of Canada. Doesn't mean that we have that issue outside. We're a global, we're a global economy now. And, Canadians will have to, get that chicken little idea out of their minds that, Toronto and Ontario is not the only place to invest. And there's
Look
other
at all the people move to Alberta.
Yes, Alberta.
Record numbers.
Outside of the country. This is what I'm saying. And it can be done with Canadian arms. And this is one of the beautiful things. And I'm those Canadian arms, let me tell you, from a financial perspective, from a global real estate perspective, we can safely put you in other people's arms so that you can discuss the tax implications, and you can end up living the life of your dreams. So there still are other ideas. The other thing I want to say for tenants, there are programs called like Oroboro. There's co-ownership programs that are available with the government. So there are a lot of options for tenants to do this sort of like help you with a down payment so that you can get into the ownership, into the property ladder. It's not just property owners and people who are currently property owners who can continue to be a property investor. Like, let's start helping tenants. I was in banking as well, and there's things that can be done with your credit. Like, work with a realtor, work with financial advisors. Financial advisors are not just for the rich and famous. They're for people. Like, there are levels of financial advisors who will help you improve your credit. They can work with their financial advisors within your financial institutions who can lower your payments. This was something that was done for me when I first was with, and it was Scotia at the time, and I was saving for my first house. I had some debt. I had a line of credit, and they reduced my payment option from 3% to maybe 1%. They took the 2% different and invested it in mutual funds in a pre-authorized contribution, which means it was automatically coming out of the top. It took me a period of time, but over a couple of years, I was able to then take the money from the debt payments that I was paying, because I had that on my back, put it into a mutual fund, which grew for me. I didn't spend that money. And the amazing thing about saving in a pre-authorized way is that you are buying more over time when the price is lower, and when the price is higher, it's like dollar cost averaging. And it's coming off the top, because you're never going to save if you're trying to save it after you paid everything else. You save off the top. And so you can do that. And they will probably be bringing back cashback mortgages. I wouldn't be surprised to see that, where you can end up getting a certain percentage of cash back that you can use towards your closing costs on a mortgage. So like, there are programs that we can use to help transition people from the tenant space into an ownership space with realism. Like, you're going into a condo first, right? Use that as a stepping stone to your townhome and then to your detached property. These are long-term strategies that we can incorporate with financial institutions to help you. But get on board and contact a realtor. Contact me. I'm on social media under Nicole Forrester Real Estate Broker on all platforms. And what I will do at the very least is just give you a complimentary consultation about your situation and connect you with professionals in all these different arenas who can give you and will give you an honest look at your situation and say, okay, this is where you are today. Let's work on your credit.
Yeah.
Maybe if you've got your debt with Scotia or your debt with TD, we connect you with a financial person there. And they do like what I said, where they reduce your debt payment and then put you into a bit of a mutual fund and set you up on a pre-authorized contribution. So you start saving that down payment. Then we connect you with a group like Oroboro, who's going to give you, once you have 5%, they're going to give you maybe 15% more, depending on your good credit, to get you into a property. And then what we do is connect you with a great financial person who, after that property has appreciated over a number of years, is going to refinance to pay out the co-ownership. So then now you own it and you're generating equity and you're building equity there. And then you move up the property ladder. Like, work with financial professionals to get you from where you are to where you want to be.
That's perfect into getting that group of people that are so borderline getting into the housing. They just need an extra little help. But on the other side, we do have this group of people who will never be homeowners. Like, that's just reality in itself. And if they're not going to be homeowners, they still need a home to live in which who is going to be that person to create that home for them to live in, especially big families. They're looking for these houses to actually rent. But unfortunately, the price of everything that's increasing, how do you keep it in their affordability crisis? And they started getting into that with the portable housing benefit. It helps tenants that are, struggling with keeping up with the market rate. But it's a little trickery because in order to get that portable housing benefit, you need to be on the government housing waiting list, and you have to remove your name from the housing waiting list to get that $350, right? So it looks like, you're taking off people off the waiting list, but you're only giving them that 350, and we don't know how long that's going to last for. Look at the price of food. How are we supposed to expect people to continue to try to save and for a house, or even to pay their rent for that matter, when the price of food and utilities are just going through the roof? We have a lot of mismanagement of the housing crisis, but we have overspending by our elected officials. We have money being given out for everything and anything, and I don't think they do a good job with the follow-up to say, did it do something good for our community? If so, we'll keep it going. If not, you got to pull that funds, and you got to know that we got to stay with the basics of like providing the necessity of like our food, our utilities, our housing, our education, our healthcare. But unfortunately, we're seeing a lot of money being spent, and it's obviously, we're feeling it now. We have tent encampments as a form of housing. It's, we have shipping containers as a form of housing. We have, our people in Kitchener putting sandbags in together and stacking them as a sandcastle, and that's a form of housing. We're going backwards, and they don't want to sit here and give us every benefit of the doubt when it comes down to creating the developments at the city. They want you to contribute to an affordable housing benefit. They want to, make you go through the ringer. They want a fee of $18,000 in order to create an additional unit to your fiveplex. And that could be a yes or a no, that your money for $18,000 is gone. A lot of it. And I think Pierre gets that with the red tape. But it's the province. It's the province that's stepped in way too much. And I think we need to have, it needs to be teared down. Everything needs to be teared down. Let's rebuild it back up again. Get the landlords, the private sector, get the nonprofit housing sector, get the tenants in the mix as well. We have to restructure what this looks like, because the numbers need to make sense in this real estate business. And right now it doesn't.
Absolutely. And I think that as the numbers making sense, then everything will start to make sense. And you bring up some important points. And, I'm going to direct everybody to the economiccharter.ca. This is being championed by Frank Stronach, who is a homegrown Canadian billionaire of Magna International. And he's been a big proponent for, like, one of the amazing things about his business was that he really championed the employee and made them and did profit sharing with employees. And that's really what grew and multiplied his business and made him a billionaire. So to me, he is absolutely a leader in our country who should be listened to. And, at this stage of his life, he could be, riding off into the sunset, but he's really championing this economiccharter.ca, which really is a bipartisan look at how we get our economy back on track. And he wants us as Chamber of Citizens to, and check that out. Maybe we could put it in the link below, but it makes,
what's the name of it again?
It's the economiccharter.ca. And it's based on 7 principles, but overall, Frank's idea, and it's so true, is that if we don't have a thriving economy, we won't have a thriving country anymore. And so there's some basic things that we need to get back on track, like creating a situation where we're not constantly in debt, because just like anybody who's running a household knows, you can't constantly be running at a deficit. So he has a plan for that. He's a champion for small business, but small business, and then as they grow, a champion for the employees so that they become profit sharers in building that small business. But what are landlords and property investors other than small business owners? We need to have laws that make sense. We need to do things that make sense from an economic point of view so that we can continue to see our country flourish. Because to tell you the truth, like you said, when we have laws that are encouraging property owners to take their money outside of the country, and we have laws that are encouraging people to be tenants forever, this creates an unsustainable economy.
They give
When
up. They give up. Your goal was to be a homeowner. Now you see all those dreams are done. Like I started at 18. And my daughter is now, 20 years old and struggling just to find that basic starter home, where she's just came over the other day and say she's going to Florida. We're like, what? Stay here, man. Like you're not going to Florida quite yet. But
yeah,
this is the demographic of what's happening in our society, and we need people like yourself, and we need people like Sean and Ryan and Sarah to keep bringing the mindsets together and keep talking about it, because you can't come up with a solution with the same mindset that created the crisis. You need to have more.
and you have to have practical solutions that make sense. Do I think, we talked about privatization of the tribunal versus, like $19 million. Are you kidding me? Why is there a backup in there? Give that to a small business owner. Do you think you gave that to a realtor that we wouldn't have that backlog cleared? What in the heck did they do with $19 million that they only cut the backlog in half?
Well, you're
That is
getting salaries $110,000 just to hire an adjudicator for just to sit there, and they look stressed out to all max. I think we have to pay for their benefits too, because they're going to need a psychiatrist by the time that they're done with it. But a lot of that stuff could be done by paper. You don't need a full-on hearing. A lot of the stuff can be dealt with, just like if you don't pay your Rogers bill, here's your time frame to make your payment, and if you don't, this is what's going to happen to you. We have local service managers. They help tenants who qualify with rent relief. I've seen these local service managers pay up to $10,000 to keep someone in their home. Did the tenant stay in their home? Until they became delinquent again. And then after the 5 months, they got evicted. So it's almost like wasted money on people knowing that they can't sustain their own home. And here we have to make sure that that money is being used and it's not being abused, because it is desperately needed between housing banks, or rent banks, so is what it's called. But we have to put a process in place that the landlords can vouch for that. We can confirm that this is what's happening. Yes, we're going to keep our tenancy. Even though landlords are going after a tenant for non-payment of rent, it doesn't mean that they're not causing damages to that rental unit, and they're going to be evicted for the damages anyways, right? So we have to create something that does protect the taxpayers.
Damages are willful. Most of the time, that is willful. So that's a criminal act, and we should be able to charge.
You got your name tenant. You can't be criminal. You got to name tenant. That comes with power.
Well, if somebody comes onto your private property and defaces that property, it's a criminal act, and they can be charged. That's it. Right? Is that not the law? That is the law. But
Maybe
why is it?
We need to advocate for it.
Why is a tenant above that? You can't take a rent deposit for damages, but you're having someone in your home. It's your private property, right? You have to have insurance on it for the bank. So why is that any different?
It should be. Just like if I came to your house right now and I kicked in your door, I'd be charged with mischief or vandalism, right? But because the tenants are inside of the home, that's what's granting them. And that's like a policy that puts consequences in place for the tenants, and it gives that landlord reassurance that they're being protected by the laws that we all have to follow. right? And that could avoid tenants from doing what they're doing. It's not like normal wear and tear. We're talking like massive damages, drywall, the pipes are being removed from the property, holes in the kitchen cabinets, spray paint all over the place. Landlords are very scared, and that's why, are they going to be investing in an area that is very pro tenant? And it's not that all tenants are poor and all landlords are rich. So we have to come into that medium ground to be like, these are just the rules. Everyone needs to respect each other. You need to respect the landlord. You need to respect the other tenants at the property. And the landlords need to respect the rules when it comes down to the tenants, because that's
Absolutely.
their home, right? Like sometimes I do see a lot of landlords being very invasive into tenants' personal life. And that's just because they're bringing more people into the property, and the landlords are responsible for the utilities. So that's why it's like, okay, well, if a small change from our government could be like, if a landlord has a lease, here are the people that have been approved to live in the unit. If anyone else wants to come in, it has to be approved by the landlord, and
Sure.
in which the tenant can have their rent increased to cover the utilities to that unit, right? Right now, they can move in whoever they want, and it's the same price. They get extra income coming in by hiring more, allowing more people into their rental unit, but the landlord can't charge more, right? That's the just one simple policy that can make that fair and make it appealing to more investors to wanting to be in here. Just like that rent increase guideline, where if you charge above the 2.5%, but the tenant pays it on time and in full for 12 months, it becomes the lawful rent. So it's like, are you trying to get us to be shady? How about you just keep it balanced, make it where it is, different units have different, if it's the utilities are included, if they're not included, if it's a condo. I'm hearing a lot of condos have stopped their projection of doing their construction on condos because the material cost, the labor shortage, everything is broken within our housing industry right now. But to be on the good note, Nicole, just by this housing summit and the people who have brought all those mastermind of people together, they are bringing everyone together for a roundtable discussion at Queen's Park. I believe it's on the 13th of June. So hopefully I can be a part of that, because a lot of it needs to be said. And I don't think we were able to captivate it there with the 45-minute panel and multiple panels that I never even got to see all of them. So it'd be nice to have that roundtable discussion at Queen's Park and continue to get involved even at your municipal level when it comes down to housing. If it's on an affordable housing committee, if it's about any development that is happening and supporting the development within that sector. But we do have a lot of work ahead of us to do. And unfortunately, it's not going to be easy, but we just need to keep organizing ourselves together as not just as landlords and property managers and realtors and paralegals and tenants, but let's bring our businesses in to create a more harmonized way of creating that fair and balanced housing system for everyone involved, because deep down we're all paying for it. You see every article that comes out now.
That's what I really wanted to put a face on for everybody there. Is, like I said, it's not foreign investors, it's not corporate landlords. We're all the same people. We're all Canadians here. We're all a squirrel trying to get a nut. We're all living in this community and have a voice and need to, live together and create opportunities for one another that are sustainable. Like, you want to talk about, I was at that affordable housing summit, and I'm going to give a shout out to Ian Jones, one of the bigger developers there, who has this amazing Joy project. I'm going to have him on my podcast shortly. But some of the numbers that he was telling me about with the Joy project, I mean, I think he was talking about like $1,300 or something like that, as low as that for a condo for seniors. Just making things affordable. I mean, this is a developer, a big developer, and God bless him. He's a Christian man. He's a Canadian who, is part of this summit. And I'll tell you more about his Joy project when I have him on my podcast. I can't talk the ins and outs.
Now.
The numbers that he was talking about was so affordable that
Yeah.
I thought, this is brilliant. And
Well,
I'm
we'll make
really
sure we'll share it into the group when you have them on your podcast, and please put the link in the chat here so that we can, follow along with what you're doing as well, because it's very important, especially when our seniors make up 40% of the people living in our shelters. Like this is what's happening in Canada, and it's only going to get worse. And I think a lot of people are just hoping and praying that the election brings change, and with change comes different mindsets. But we can't, we're not going to count our chickens before they hatch. We just know that we need to do whatever we can to keep providing, clean and safe and affordable units that we can create within our own budget. But it's all about that numbers, and people have to think like we can't just offer $800 units anymore. It's not like it was back in 2008, 2009 when we could offer that. Everything has just gone up in price for the owners, which same thing with our groceries. They put the cost to our grocers and they pass that cost down to the consumer. So we have to see that it all has a domino effect to this. And I'm hoping that we do see some new faces when it comes down to politicians, but also staff. I think staff are very key into making these type of changes at all levels of government, and do whatever you can to follow them on LinkedIn, to follow them on social media, to have your say. Don't be quiet. I know we have people that don't think the same mindset as us, and they're going to be very hateful towards you, but it's Canada. You have your freedom of speech. Better speak up, or you ain't going to speak up for nothing.
Well,
So
what's there to be hateful about? I'm an advocate for all people. I want tenants to turn into owners. I want to be an advocate for owners.
mm,
If you hate me, you hate yourself, right? Like I'm just a girl in the world. I'm a Canadian. I'm a person who, wasn't given anything and worked hard to get where I am. I work, and I continue to work hard. I've been working since I'm 13 years old in Canada. What's to hate? I've been a renter myself. You
yeah.
know,
We all started as renters. We know where it was, but the time has changed where it now, just like the price of housing has now just skyrocketed. Now it's just going to be supply and demand, and let's get that supply up. But what's stopping people from wanting creating that supply? And I know from Ontario people alone, it's the RTA and the LTB. And like you mentioned, we have that older population that do have these homes that can be converted into duplexes, even triplexes for that matter. But what's going to stop them? Is it finances? Is it just the red tape at their municipal level? Or is it knowing that they can accept someone into that rental unit and they can stay there without paying rent for a year, and they have more say of the property than you do?
Well, hey, look at this idea. And this is going back to more of an immigrant type mentality. My mother was an immigrant here to this great country, but let's play this scenario out.
Mm,
You have an older person who's got all their money tied up, so they're house rich, cash poor. So they
mhm.
improve their quality of life by downsizing to a condo here and a condo somewhere else so they can spend some time and be a snowbird. Not now that now they have a property that's available, and somebody goes into co-ownership with a couple of members of their family, so they turn that larger property into a triplex, even, because now we can have garden suites. So you've got a family living upstairs, you've got a basement apartment for another family member, and you've got a garden suite. So all of a sudden your tenant is no longer a stranger, but they're family members. Like, so we're seeing co-ownership happening between family members. Now
Yeah.
that's something that's more of an immigrant type mentality, but that's an amazing way to get rid of some of the issues that you're seeing in the tribunal when families start really being families and helping each other give a leg up, right? I've talked to many fantastic Canadians who, God bless them, they've got, $100,000 saved for their child who's not going to have that wedding that they want them to have.
Yeah.
And I said to them, instead of having them in your basement, why don't you help them with a gift of a down payment for their first property to get them into the property market, right? So
Yeah.
this is something, because we're not seeing as many people get married. This is just what's happened in the culture. So why don't we see that happening? You want to talk from an immigration standpoint? It's something that they always used to do, is when you're bringing in immigrants, you're spreading them out. We are a vast country. Not everybody has to come to the Greater Toronto area. There are job opportunities all over Canada. Perhaps change where you're sending people and what you're sending them to do. Let's start growing some of these other cities outside of the Greater Toronto area. And why
Yeah.
don't some of the permit issues. Like if the government actually does, like the issue with housing is, the we've got a supply and demand issue, and this is what keeps putting pressure on price. Guess what? If you have enough houses, it's going to put it's going to take the prices down,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the real issue, something that I heard them talk about on the panel at the affordable housing, with one of the, I believe it was an MPP that was there talking about what they're doing, is that something like, is it 40% like in permits, the price of a new build?
Oh,
Like
the
this
permits are
obstacle.
ridiculous.
So the government, that's the government. Get rid of that.
Yeah.
Let,
Yeah.
like let's Now we need to put the spotlight back on the government. The government is coming out on all levels with like things that don't make sense, and they're encouraging poor behavior. There's an absolutely supply issue. So take away the permits or reduce the permits or the price of the permits or whatever the heck it is that is an actual obstacle to people building.
It's almost like the way that they would deny an application for a bill just because there was no parkings on that plan. And it's like, well, if there's no parking on the plan, then that would mean that the owner would have to appeal to someone who doesn't have a car. They're really pushing, fast transit, LRT, busing. And it's like, well, there is a lot of people that don't have cars, but they do need a home. Like, why would you just stop a project from happening just because it doesn't have parking, but it is very close to transit? There's little things like that. And the amount of money that our municipalities are spending just to represent themselves when projects don't go as approved, they now fight it at the Ontario Land Tribunal. So now they're representing themselves at the tribunal in order to say why they did not want to have that development be put in their city. So there's so much, and we always know through this housing summit that this is a multifaceted problem, and it's going to need all hands on deck in order to solve it. But if we don't have the proper task force or the proper people making these type of decisions quick enough, because everything happens with government is very, very slow. So we need to have something that's more quick, more rash, and hopefully we'll have that on the federal level with the Conservatives if they get elected in. But talks are happening at provincial level, thinking that they're going to strike election early at the provincial level. So it's, you never know what's going to happen. We just know that you need to get very familiar with all your candidates and all levels of government, all levels of writing, because these people are the ones who do have a say in what kind of housing developments get approved. And I don't think we're all going to solve it today, because this has been decades in the making. But Nicole is obviously, she's going to be your go-to girl to get out of Ontario, guys, because we already know this is dead. Every TikTok video I watch just talks about Ontario. Don't get into it. So connect with Nicole. She's going to be able to know what areas that we should be exploring. We already talked about New Brunswick. I've been hearing that quite a bit, as well as Alberta. And if you don't want to stay in Canada because of your capital gains, obviously we have our other people in our group that will connect you to other states that are landlord friendly, because the money needs to be there for the landlords. We're not working for free. We're not supposed to be the people providing the full affordable housing experience at $120 a month for rent. We're here to provide that selection, that variety that people have. And unfortunately, we're not going to see that built in this year or meet their quota, but it doesn't mean that we don't stop trying, right? So Nicole,
I just want to say that for the people that are within Ontario, there are some great solutions. So if you're a tenant and you're looking to be connected with financial professionals that can help you get to the point and help you save to the point where you can participate in an Ouroboros or co-ownership type situation, reach out to me. If you are a multi-generational family and you're looking for a duplex, or like I had mentioned before, where you could have a home and you have 3 units for 3 different families, and they're within your own family, that's another amazing solution. So there are so many solutions even within Ontario. I think we have to just get the dialogue going. Reach out to me. I am happy to connect you with other professionals that help you explore that even within Ontario as well.
That is awesome. So you heard it here first, guys. So there's still a little bit of hope for some, but we do have a lot more advocacy efforts that we do need to do. So I want you to make sure that you do whatever you can to advocate, bring other landlords into the mix, talk about what we actually can see as solutions. We can't fix everything from what the city's doing, but we do have a deep understanding of what the RTA and the LTB is doing. So we'll continue on our advocacy efforts on getting those policies changed so it does make it fair for both good landlords, good tenants, and even our taxpayers who are funding this lovely tribunal system. Nicole, thank you so much for jumping on. I know I was only supposed to have you for a half an hour, but me and you are like, we're like a peas in a pod. We can totally talk so much more. So we'll have you back on again so that we'll have it more of a bring some interviews, get people to jump on, and that way they can come on the camera too and ask you some questions. Cause I think a nice little TV show, talk show host thing would also be awesome.
On the hot seat. Well, Kayla, I appreciate you, your bravery, your advocacy for all parties. We need you. We love you.
I'm on camera. Don't make me blush.
Absolutely. Nobody should be turning to two women and with any hateful anything when we're Canadian women who are empowered and advocates for voices not heard. I challenge anybody that is not the right thing to be doing in Canada. So hear us roar, and we're the advocates, and you are a fantastic advocate, and I really appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Nicole. I really, really, really appreciate those kind words. I know it's exhausting at times, but I want to thank everyone for all their support over the years. That keeps me going. Once you start seeing me with like curlers in, I think it would be my time to bow down and to give up. But if there's any opportunity for me to reach out to elected officials or even come to an investment group or a landlord group to rally and to get you excited about advocating, I'm more than willing to help and be a part of that as well. So reach out to me, and you can look me up on all the platforms, and I'll be happy to talk and see what we can do together as a team, because it is going to take a massive village to raise these concerns for officials. Thank you, everyone. And I hope you enjoyed the live, and we'll see you again. Just make sure you subscribe to our Ontario Landlords Watch YouTube channel. Take care.
Bye.